Welcome to Successful Teaching for Acceptance of Responsibility, Section 3, 4E Model for Teaching Responsibility Centers. Now that you have been introduced to the basic components of the 4E model for teaching responsibility, you are going to experience centers that demonstrate specific strategies for each of these components. Let's take a look at what you are going to do. You are going to work in your grade level groups for this next activity. You are going to rotate to each of the 4E model for teaching responsibility centers. Since you are going to experience the 4 E's in a center format, most of you are going to be completing the centers out of the usual 4E model order. As you do so, remember that the educate always comes first, followed by experience, evaluate, and enforce, regardless of the order in which you do the centers. The directions for each center are in the Canvas discussion area and in the direction box at the beginning of each center in your participant manual, so that way they stand out. Determine who in your group is going to act in the following roles. Directions monitor. Check off each direction in the direction box as the group completes each step and make sure the group adheres to and completes each and every direction. Timekeeper. Your job is to keep track of the time and make sure the group finishes the entire center in the time allotted. Recorder. Post the group work in the designated location. Information monitor. Your job is to make sure the group takes the time to read and discuss the information at each center so your group learns the important key details. Field any questions from the class during debriefing. Please take a look at the Close to My Heart from your course folder. Turn to the directions box that corresponds to that center and be sure your group completes all of the directions. It is extremely important that you take the time to read the information about each topic in order to thoroughly understand the concept and what is expected. So be sure to take the time to not only read, but to discuss insights and how the information connects to your classroom and the students at your grade level. At any center, you can use your personal electronic devices to search for related ideas. Before we begin the centers, remove the Be choice from your course folder and remind yourself how you have chosen to be during Section 3 and this center's activity. You should spend 20 minutes at each center to complete the center activities and display your work. Please go to Canvas, Modules, Section 3, Center Educate 1, Direct Teaching. For Center Educate 1 Direct Teaching, locate and complete pages 44 to 47. As a group, decide how you are going to read Educate 1 Direct Teaching and Teaching Procedures on page 45. Please highlight important points as you read and discuss what stood out to you. Review the Direct Teaching exemplars provided on page 46 in the PLS Course Library Appendix tab. Use page 47 Direct Teaching Worksheet and work as a group to brainstorm a list of topics for which a procedure would be effective in your classroom. Work individually or as a group and choose 2 procedures students need to follow in your classroom. Create a direct teaching procedure for the 2 procedures you have chosen. Use page 47 Direct Teaching Worksheet to create your procedures. Choose one of the procedures your group has created to practice. Choose a teacher for your group who will act out teaching the procedure using see, say, do practice, with the rest of the group acting as students. Using the editable Google slideshow for Center 1, visit the next available slide and display one example of a direct teaching procedure created by your group. Post your direct teaching procedure to the discussion area. Please go to Canvas, Modules, Section 3, Center Educate 2, T-charts. For Center Educate 2 T-charts, locate and complete pages 48 to 52. As a group, decide how you are going to read Educate 2 T-charts on page 49 and developing a T-chart on page 50. Please highlight important points as you read and discuss what stood out to you. Review the T-chart exemplars provided on page 51 and in the PLS Course Library Appendix tab. Use page 52 T-chart worksheet and work as a group to brainstorm a list of topics for each type of T-chart that would be appropriate in your classroom. Decide which type of T-chart each member of your group is going to create. Make sure all types of T-charts are covered by the group. Looks like, sounds like T-chart. Looks like, sounds like, feels like T-chart. Compare, contrast T-chart. Work individually and create a T-chart of potential responses for a topic of your choice. Use page 52 T-chart worksheet to draft your potential responses. Decide who in your group is going to be the teacher and lead the rest of the group in creating the T-chart they have drafted, which will be similar to, but not exactly like the potential answers drafted. Using the editable Google slideshow for Center Educate 2, go to the next available slide and create a final T-chart as the teacher leads the rest of the group through the development of the T-chart. As time permits, repeat the development process for the other two types of T-charts. Post each type of T-chart your group created in the discussion area. Please go to Canvas Modules Section 3, Center Educate 3, Curriculum Connections. For Center Educate 3, Curriculum Connections, please locate and complete pages 53 through 55. As a group, decide how you are going to read Educate 3 Curriculum Connections on page 54. Please highlight important points as you read and discuss what stood out to you. Review the examples of Curriculum Connections exemplars in the PLS Course Library Appendix tab. As a group, brainstorm other ways you can teach self-responsibility in a way that connects to curriculum or share specific lessons in which you do and add your ideas under the subheading Curriculum Connections in My Classroom on page 54. As a group, decide how you are going to read Sinking of the Titanic, Who is Responsible on page 55, as well as the Titanic information linked here. Based on the information, work individually and rank the various individuals in the order of who is most responsible for the sinking of the Titanic and loss of life. Complete the Who is Most Responsible worksheet on page 55 and explain why for each of your rankings. Work as a group, share your rankings and your explanations. Discuss any differences in your rankings and work to reach consensus as to who is most responsible. In your grade level group's editable Google Doc, post your group's final consensus regarding the rankings as to who is most responsible for the sinking of the Titanic and loss of life. Post your final consensus ranking in the discussion area. Please go to Canvas Modules Section 3, Center Educate 4, Social Emotional Activities. Close to my heart. We can enhance students' personal power and mental models by doing activities that ask students to reflect on who they are and what is important to them. Students tend to exhibit more self-responsibility in the areas that mean the most to them. For Center Educate 4, Social Emotional Activities, locate and complete pages 56 through 58. As a group, decide how you are going to read Educate 4, Social Emotional Activities on page 57. Highlight important points as you read and discuss what stood out to you. Please make a copy of the Close to My Heart graphic. If you double-click on an area of the heart, you will go to the drawing tool where you can insert a text box for that area. Work individually and complete the various sections of your Close to My Heart graphic, adding additional divisions if desired. Represent in words, symbols, and pictures what is close to your heart. For example, family, career interests, pets, social contributions, friends, strengths, hobbies and interests, values, favorite place, religion, best vacation, favorite subjects, favorite sports, and favorite foods. Please feel free to use personal images or Google Images to select photos that best represent each section. Work individually and choose 2 topics on your Close to My Heart graphic. Respond to the Close to My Heart responsibility reflection prompts on page 58 and reflect on how you demonstrate self-responsibility in these 2 areas. Work as a group and share some of your Close to My Heart sections as well as your responses to your Close to My Heart responsibility reflection. Please take a picture and upload your Close to My Heart graphic to the discussion area. Feel free to share any information you would like the class to know. Please go to Canvas Modules Section 3, Center Educate 5, Modeling and Teacher Talk. For Center Educate 5, Modeling and Teacher Talk, please locate and complete pages 59 to 64. As a group, decide how you are going to read Educate 5, Modeling and Teacher Talk on pages 60 and 61. Please highlight important points as you read and discuss what stood out to you. As a group, decide how you are going to read Teacher Talk, self-referred comments on page 62. Please highlight important points as you read and discuss what stood out to you. Take turns reading the self-referred comments examples on page 62, using a natural speaking voice and neutral tone. For the 5 self-referred comments examples on page 62, write a B above the phrase that represents the responsible behavior. Write a C above the phrase that represents the responsibility connection. Use the editable Google Doc for your grade level group and write 5 self-referred comments of your own that you would deliver in your classroom. As a group, decide how you are going to read Choices Strategy 1, Ownership of Choice, Teacher Talk, Choose, Decide, Pick on page 63. Highlight important points as you read and discuss what stood out to you. Take turns reading the Teacher Talk, Choose, Decide, Pick statements on page 64, using a natural speaking voice and neutral tone. Then, use the next page of your editable Google Doc and write 5 Choose, Decide, Pick statements of your own that you would deliver in your classroom. Use the Choose, Decide, Pick worksheet on page 64 to take notes. Take turns saying the Choose, Decide, Pick statements that you wrote out loud to the other members of your group. Post your completed Google Doc in the discussion area. Please go to Canvas Modules Section 3, Center 6, Experience, Evaluate. For Center 6, Experience, Evaluate, please locate and complete pages 65 through 69. Experience. As a group, decide how you are going to read Experience on page 66. Please highlight important points as you read and discuss what stood out to you. And discuss other examples of how you can use Experience with your students and add them under Experience in my classroom on page 66. Evaluate. As a group, decide how you are going to read Evaluate on page 67. Please highlight important points as you read and discuss what stood out to you. Read the compelling whys for Evaluate on page 68. State your opinion of these compelling whys in the My Opinion box and discuss your opinions as a group. Work as a group and complete the benefits of Evaluate T-chart for students low in personal power and low in mental models on page 68. Review and discuss the Evaluate strategies on page 69 and in the Evaluate exemplars in the PLS course library appendix tab. Use your personal electronic devices to research and share other Evaluate ideas. Work individually and choose one of the Evaluate strategies on page 69 or one that you have found. Use the editable Google slideshow for your grade level group to create a visual of your Evaluate strategy that is curriculum specific to your classroom. Post your completed grade level group's Google slideshow in the discussion. Please go to Canvas, Modules, Section 3, Center 7, Enforce. For Center 7, Enforce, please locate and complete pages 70 through 74. As a group, decide how you are going to read Enforce on pages 71 and 72. Please highlight important points as you read and discuss what stood out to you. Read the punishment versus consequences introduction and definitions on page 73. Using the statements in the provided Google Doc, sort the statements into the punishment or consequences category. Record the card numbers for each categories on the punishment versus consequences T-chart on page 73. When the members of your group are finished, share the card numbers in each category and discuss discrepancies. Complete the punishment versus consequences T-chart on page 73 by making generalizations about the card statements. Work as a group to list paired words or phrases that specifically describe punishment and consequences. Note the example given. Refer to appendix page 3 to confirm the accuracy of your card placement and potential T-chart responses. Work as a group and discuss consequences that you have found to be effective in your classroom and list them on the bottom of page 73. Using the editable Google slideshow, list 3 to 5 consequences that the group has found to be most effective for the students at your grade level. As a group, decide how you are going to read Tips for Enforcing Consequences on page 74. Please highlight important points as you read and discuss what stood out to you. Post your group's consequences in my classroom in the editable Google slideshow. Please let your classmates know when your slide is finished. Please locate page 75, Gallery Walk for Ideas. During our debrief, you are going to have an opportunity to review the work of your colleagues and record any ideas that you can use as well. Choose a place to record new ideas you receive from your colleagues. Options include on the Responsibility and Action card in your course folder, on the corresponding center pages in your participant manual, or in a notebook. Please rotate through all 7 centers and review the work of your colleagues and record any ideas you can use in your classroom. What insights emerged regarding Center Educate 1, Direct Teaching, and Center Educate 2, T-charts? Have you always taught procedures and have used direct teaching consistently? Do you think the addition of T-charts open up a way to teach other behaviors that are harder to explain? Have you learned to make your direct teaching lists more succinct and positive? Did you like the way the students are involved in the development of the T-chart? Notice the quote about direct teaching on the bottom of page 44 by Harry Wong in The First Days of School. The number one problem in the classroom is not discipline. It is the lack of procedures and routines. Notice the quote about looks like, sounds like, feels like T-charts on the bottom of page 48 by Immanuel Kant in Critique of Pure Reason. All of our knowledge begins with the senses. What insights emerged regarding Center Educate 3, Curriculum Connections, and Center Educate 4 social emotional activities. Could you see a lot of ways to discuss who is responsible in both social studies and in characters in a story? Are there many social emotional activities that focus on responsibility and integrating them into your lessons, making them even more powerful? Did you think that Close to My Heart was a powerful lesson in responsibility? Because we tend to be more responsible for things that are important to us. Notice the quote about curriculum connections on the bottom of page 53 by Daniel H. Wilson in More Human Than Human. True knowledge is not in the things, but in finding the connections between the things. Notice the quote about social emotional activities in the Close to My Heart activity on the bottom of page 56 by Colin Morgan as Merlin. Anything that is close to your heart is worthy of your time and commitment. What insights emerged regarding Center Educate 5 modeling and teacher talk? Did you like the way we learned concrete ideas of how to model responsibility? Do you think the choose, decide, pick strategy is easy to use and can make an important difference in getting students to cooperate and be more responsible? Do you think that sometimes we don't realize how powerful our teacher talk can be in both a positive and a negative way? Notice the quote about modeling on the bottom of page 60 by Orison Swett Marden in Success Magazine. If you can't find a good role model, be one. Notice the quote about teacher talk on the bottom of page 61 by Peggy O'Mara in Quiet Place. The way we talk to our children becomes their inner voice. What insights emerged regarding Center 6, Experience, Evaluate? Did you realize that you need to use more self-assessment and peer assessment with your students? Did you have an aha moment when we read about reflecting on our experiences and doing something with the feedback to improve? Have you been skipping this step completely? Did you think there was a lot of useful ideas in the strategies chart? Notice the quote about experience on the bottom of page 66 by Julius Caesar, the Roman leader. Experience is the teacher of all things. Notice the quote about evaluate on the bottom of page 65 by Oscar Alaquis in The Secret of Greatness. Self-evaluation directs us to prepare our next performance from today's experience and those of the past. What insights emerged regarding Center 7, Enforce? Did you realize that you tend to enable your son and are too wishy-washy with consequences? Did the concept of don't give second chances but give a second opportunity really clarify things for you? Had you looked at it that way before? Were the tips on delivering consequences tips you need to remind yourself to use? Have you been guilty of not adhering to some of those tips? On appendix page 3, you checked your answers to the punishment versus consequences card sort on page 73 and the potential T-chart responses. Notice the quote about enforce on the bottom of page 70 by Sham Hinduja, spiritualist and counselor. The universal law of karma is the law of cause and effect, action and reaction. You reap what you sow. What thoughts, comments, or questions do you have about the 4E model for teaching responsibility? Please remove Evaluate, Responsibility, Self, and Peer Assessment from your course folder. Next, I would like you to self-assess and peer assess yourself and the other members of your group as it relates to responsibility when completing the centers with your group. Read each prompt, indicate your rating, and explain the rating that you chose. Discuss your responses once everyone in the group has completed the self and peer assessment. Discuss what you learned from this experience and what you might do differently next time you do centers or work in a group. What insights emerged when completing and discussing the Evaluate Responsibility Self and Peer Assessment? Did this Evaluate assessment make you wonder if you could trust students to be accurate in their assessment of themselves and their peers? Did you think your group ranked high in all of these categories? Did it feel good to be able to show your success in a self and peer assessment? Did this give you pride in a job well done? Did you like that you had to explain your rating and reflect on what you had learned? Did that step add more accountability? Please remember, the components of the 4E model for teaching responsibility that you experienced in these centers are a powerful way to teach students self-responsibility. We have only scratched the surface of potential strategies that fall under each of these 4 E's. As you move through the course, we are going to spiral back to this 4E model for teaching responsibility and show you other strategies you can use that correlate to each of the 4 E's. Remember, we cannot assume that students should know how. If you want a behavior, you have to teach a behavior. Let's conduct another starburst. A starburst is a fireworks celebration. Clap your hands at your waist to make a noise, and wiggle your hands up in the air like a firework shooting upward. Clap your hands at the top, and then arch your arms downward like a firework exploding, while saying "ah" in awe and wonder. This concludes Section 3, 4E Model for Teaching Responsibility Centers. We will continue to Module Section 3, Teaching Responsibility, Closing.